I was standing in this Portland airport, right outside baggage claim, holding my garment bag in one hand and pulling my suitcase with the other. I'd flown in for one night. No vacation. No cute I'm home photo. Just a tight schedule and a uniform that was pressed so sharp it could cut someone's ego in half. I opened my phone and did the one thing I told myself I wouldn't do anymore. I asked my family for something normal. I typed into the family group chat, "Flight lands at 3 p.m. Can someone pick me up?" I stared at the message for a second before sending it. Not because it was complicated, because it shouldn't have been. The reply came fast, like she'd been waiting for a chance. "My sister Kinsley, take an Uber, no one has time to pick you up. We're not your taxi. No welcome home. No how was your flight." Not even a fake smile in text form. Just straight to the point, like I was some random coworker asking for a ride after a shift. A minute later, my mom joined in like it was her turn. "Mom, why didn't you plan better?" I let the phone sit in my palm while people moved around me with flowers, balloons, and big, loud airport reunions. You know the type. People hugging like they're starring in a commercial. Meanwhile, I'm standing there with a suitcase and a family chat that feels like a customer service line that's always closed. I typed back 2 words, "No worries," because what was I supposed to say? "Actually, Mom, I did plan. I planned to see if you'd act like you had a daughter for once." "Yeah, that would go over great." I slid my phone into my pocket and walked toward the rideshare pickup area. The air outside was cold and damp, classic Portland. I could smell wet pavement and coffee from somewhere nearby. Of course, even the city was like, "You're stressed. Here's caffeine in the air." My phone buzzed again. I didn't look. I already knew whatever came next would be some version of, "You're too sensitive," or "Stop being dramatic." I ordered an Uber. A gray Camry rolled up a few minutes later. The driver looked like he'd seen enough life to not ask dumb questions. Late 50s, calm eyes, ball cap, with a little stitched American flag on the side. He popped the trunk. I loaded my suitcase and slid into the back seat. He glanced at me through the rearview mirror. Then at the garment bag. "Military?" he asked. "Yeah." He nodded. "Navy?" "Yeah." No big reaction. No weird comments. Just a small nod like, "Got it. Respect." He pulled away from the airport, and the city started sliding past the windows. Wet streets, green trees, that gray sky that makes everyone in Portland either buy a hoodie or develop a personality. We drove in silence for a bit. The kind of silence that actually feels peaceful, because nobody's using it to punish you. Then he said, "You from here, born and raised, family picking you up." I let out a short laugh before I could stop myself. Not a cute laugh, more like the sound you make when something is so predictable it becomes funny again. "No," I said, "they're busy." He didn't push. He just nodded like he understood exactly what that meant. "Where you headed?" he asked. "Downtown," I said, "near the river." He adjusted the GPS and turned the radio down. Soft talk show. Nothing loud. The man was considerate in that quiet, normal way people don't appreciate until they grew up without it. I leaned my head against the window and watched Portland roll by. I hadn't been back in a while. Not because I hated the city. I actually like Portland. It's my family that makes it feel like walking into an old bruise. Most people think military life is all action and adrenaline and dramatic goodbyes. Here's the truth. A lot of it is paperwork early mornings and learning how to stay calm when everyone else is losing their minds. And you learn something else too. People show you exactly who they are when you ask for something small. Not money, not a huge favor, just a ride. Kinsley always acted like my existence was an inconvenience, like I was this extra responsibility nobody asked for. She's older than me by 2 years, and somehow she spent those 2 years learning how to make everything about her. Even my life. Especially my life. I could already picture her reaction later when she remembered what she texted me. She'd probably say she was just joking. That's her favorite move. Say something cruel, then call it humor when you don't laugh. We stopped at a red light near the Willamette. The driver glanced back again and said, "You in town long?" Just the day I said. He raised his eyebrows. "That's it." "Yeah, in and out." He didn't ask why. He didn't need to. People don't fly in for one day unless something matters. He dropped me near my hotel, and I thanked him. He waited while I grabbed my suitcase. As I shut the door, he said, "Hey." I looked back. "You did the right thing joining up," he said. Not everybody gets the family they deserve. That hit harder than it should have, because it was true and simple, and he said it like it wasn't a big deal. Like it was just a fact. "Thanks," I said. He nodded once and drove off. I stood on the sidewalk for a second, with the rain misting my hair and my garment bag hanging from my shoulder. Then I walked inside. Upstairs, I changed quickly. Shower hair pulled back light makeup. Nothing fancy. I wasn't going to a nightclub. I was going somewhere that required real posture. I checked my phone again. The family chat had more messages. Not from Kinsley. From my mom, of course. Mom, are you there yet? Not are you okay? Not need anything. Just a status update. Like I'm a package. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my calendar. The event details were right there. Location, time, the name of the public affairs contact. The reminder I set for myself weeks ago because, in my life, if I don't plan, nothing happens. I put my phone face down on the bed and took a breath. This night wasn't about proving anything to them. I wasn't doing this to impress my sister. But I wasn't going to pretend it didn't feel good, knowing that in a few hours, she was going to see my name somewhere she never expected. And the best part, she wasn't going to be able to rewrite it. I grabbed my coat, checked my uniform one more time, and headed for the door. The hallway smelled like hotel carpet and somebody's cheap cologne. The elevator took forever because of course it did. Outside, the rain had picked up a little, but not enough to ruin anything. Portland rain doesn't attack you. It just follows you around like it has questions. I walked to my car service pickup and gave the driver the address. As we pulled into traffic, my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't my mom. It was Kinsley, and all she sent was one short line that made my mouth go completely dry. My thumb hovered over the screen, and I could feel my pulse jump even before I opened Kinsley's message. I didn't tap it right away. Not because I was scared. More like I was bracing myself for the same old nonsense. Kinsley had a talent for saying one sentence that could ruin your whole mood, then acting confused when you didn't thank her for the experience. I finally opened it. Kinsley. Don't show up looking all important. It's not that serious. I stared at the words until my eyes went unfocused. Not that serious. That's what she always said when something mattered to me. My goals, my work, anything that didn't orbit around her. If she couldn't be the main character, she tried to make the whole plot sound dumb. I locked my phone again and slid it back into my pocket. The car moved through wet traffic, and I watched taillights smear red across the rain-speckled window. The driver didn't talk. Thank God. I didn't need small talk. I needed patience. Because I knew exactly what Kinsley was doing. She wasn't just being rude. She was trying to set the tone. She wanted me to walk into whatever building I was walking into tonight, already shrinking myself. That trick worked for most of my life. Portland was where Kinsley learned she could say things like that and get away with it. Because my parents let her. No, that's too polite. They trained her. Growing up, there were 2 daughters in our house, but it never felt like we were being raised in the same family. Kinsley was the one they bragged about. I was the one they worried about. And by worried about, I mean they acted like I was an ongoing inconvenience that never learned to behave. Kinsley would walk into a room, and my mom's face would soften automatically, like her whole nervous system relaxed. When I walked in, it was like somebody had handed her a to-do list. Did you finish your homework? Why is your room a mess? Try to be more like your sister. That last one was basically a slogan in our house. If my parents had printed it on a mug, at least, it would have been honest. I remember my 10th birthday like it was a little documentary my brain refuses to delete. It was February in Portland, which means the sky was gray and wet, and acting like that's a personality. I woke up excited anyway, because kids are optimistic for no reason. I ran downstairs expecting at least a happy birthday. The kitchen smelled like coffee. My mom was in her scrubs moving fast because she had a shift. My dad was behind the newspaper, and Kinsley was already dressed for dance class, twirling in front of the hallway mirror. Nobody looked at me. I stood there for a beat, waiting for someone to go, surprise. Nothing. I finally said quiet. It's my birthday. My mom didn't even turn around. She just said I'm busy. We'll do something this weekend. That weekend never happened. No cake, no candles, no card, nothing. The only birthday thing that happened was Kinsley joking that maybe I forgot my own birthday because I live in my head too much. My dad laughed, like it was adorable. That was my first real lesson. If Kinsley said something sharp, it was funny. If I said anything about being hurt, it was dramatic. A couple years later, I won first place in a city speech competition. Middle school. Big auditorium. Bright stage lights. They called my name and handed me a medal, and I looked out into the crowd like a complete idiot expecting to see my parents. The seats for families were right there. Front section, clear view, empty. Afterward, my teacher told me she was proud, and a stranger's mom hugged me like she knew me. I smiled and acted normal. Then I went home with the medal in my backpack. My mom didn't ask how it went. My dad didn't ask what I talked about. Kinsley didn't even pretend to care. But I didn't need to guess why. Kinsley had a school fashion thing a month later. Not even a big deal. She didn't win anything. She just walked around a gym in a dress while people clapped politely. My parents treated it like the Oscars. They took pictures, they posted them. My mom bought her a new sewing machine because she's serious about this. That phrase always came out when it was about Kinsley. She's serious. She's talented. She has potential. When it was me, the phrases were different. She's independent. She doesn't need much. She'll figure it out. That last one sounded supportive if you didn't know what it meant in our family. It meant, don't ask us. When Kinsley turned 16, my parents bought her a car. Brand new. Not a luxury one, but still. New paint, clean seats, and that smell that tells you someone else paid for your freedom. They gave it to her in the driveway and took a bunch of pictures like they were gifting her the keys to the city. My mom cried. And actual tears, like Kinsley had just cured a disease. I was 17. I had a job at a coffee shop before school, and another job in the evenings stocking shelves at a grocery store. I asked my dad if I could get help buying a used car so I could work more shifts and save for after graduation. He didn't even look up from his plate. He just said, if you want a car, earn it. So I did. I saved for months and bought a beat-up used car with peeling paint and a ripped back seat. When I pulled into the driveway, the first time I felt proud. Not because it was fancy, because it was mine. Kinsley looked through the living room window and said loud enough for me to hear, "That looks like a delivery car." My mom laughed. My dad said, "At least it runs." That was their version of encouragement. Later, college application season came, and I thought maybe, just maybe, this would be the moment that changed everything. I worked hard. I kept my grades up. I stayed out of trouble. I did everything you're supposed to do when you want adults to take you seriously. I got accepted into a good school with a strong financial package. I wasn't asking for a handout. I just needed a little help with living expenses and books. I sat at the kitchen table and brought it up carefully. My dad's answer was instant. "You already got money. We're saving for Kinsley. She wants to go to fashion school in New York." Kinsley smiled like she'd just won something. Like my future was a budget line item she beat me on. That was the moment I stopped negotiating for love. I didn't make a scene. I didn't slam a door. I just nodded and went back to my room. And in my head, something clicked into place. If I stayed, I'd spend my whole life trying to earn scraps of approval from people who only noticed me when they needed someone to compare Kinsley to. So I left. Not dramatically. Not with a big speech. I just chose a path where nobody cared who my sister was. When I told them I was joining the military, my mom blinked like I said I was moving to Mars. My dad asked one question. "Why would you do that?" Kinsley smirked. "You won't last." I remember standing there in the living room, looking at the three of them, and realizing something almost funny. They didn't know me at all. They knew the version of me they created in their heads. The quiet one, the convenient one, the one who took whatever treatment they handed out and called it normal. That girl didn't exist anymore. The car slowed as we approached my drop-off. I could see the glow of downtown lights reflecting off wet streets. My fingers curled around the strap of my garment bag. I didn't need Kinsley's permission to feel proud tonight. I didn't need my mom's approval to exist, but I could still feel it, that old reflex, the one that wanted to be seen. My phone vibrated again in my pocket like Kinsley had more to say. I didn't pull it out. Not yet. I stared ahead at this building coming into view, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't felt back in that kitchen table conversation. Control. I tightened my grip on the garment bag strap like it could keep my nerves from slipping out of my hands. The driver pulled up to the curb and said, "This you?" "Yeah," I said. He nodded toward the entrance. "Good luck tonight." "Thanks." I stepped out into the rain, and the cold air hit my face like Portland's way of saying, "Welcome back." I walked under the awning and paused long enough to check my reflection in the glass door. Hair pulled back, uniform bag clean, no lint, no wrinkles, no space left for anyone to say I looked messy or unprepared. Because in my family, if they couldn't criticize your choices, they'd criticize your appearance. It was their hobby. Inside, the lobby was warm and smelled like lemon cleaner and cheap carpet. A couple people in suits walked by, like they had somewhere important to be. I did too. Just not the kind of important they recognized. As I headed to the elevator, my brain did what it always did when I came back to Portland. It tried to rewind my life. Like the city was a button and my memories were on autoplay. I hadn't joined the Navy because I loved the ocean. I mean, sure, the ocean's great. It's big, it's dramatic, and it doesn't ask you to be more like your sister. I joined because I needed a clean reset. My senior year of high school, I lived on schedules. Wake up early, work a shift. Go to school, do homework work, another shift sleep. I learned how to function on 4 hours and caffeine. I learned how to smile while being exhausted. I learned how to stay quiet when my own house felt like a place I rented emotionally. Kinsley, meanwhile, floated through life like she had a permanent safety net. She always had a new plan, a new dream, a new reason someone should help her. And my parents ate it up. I remember one night in the kitchen. I'd just gotten my acceptance letter and financial aid package from a state school I was proud of. I wasn't asking them to pay tuition. I knew better than that. I just needed help with the gap books, a meal plan, maybe not working 2 jobs right away. I laid it out carefully, like I was presenting a case in court. My dad's response was immediate. "You have aid. You'll be fine." My mom nodded like he'd just said something wise. "You're independent, Brielle. You always have been." Kinsley was at the counter, scrolling on her phone, pretending not to listen, while listening to every word. Then my dad added, "We need to save for Kinsley. New York isn't cheap." Kinsley didn't even look up. She just smiled like she'd been waiting for the scoreboard to update. That was the moment I stopped expecting fairness. I'd known it intellectually. That night, I felt it in my bones. A week later, I went to a career fair at school. There were tables lined up across the gym. Local businesses, community colleges, trade programs, and one Navy recruiter standing there with brochures that looked like they had been designed by someone who thought bold meant all caps. I didn't walk over right away. I watched from a distance. Other kids went up, asked questions, laughed, walked away with pens and stickers. Then I noticed something. Every person who approached that table was treated the same. Nobody asked who their parents were. Nobody cared if their sister was the favorite. Nobody was grading them on vibes. They asked, "What do you want to do, and can you meet the standard?" That was it. So I walked up. The recruiter was a petty officer with a buzz cut and a calm face. He asked what I liked in school. I told him I liked structure. I liked systems. I liked knowing what was expected. He nodded like he'd heard that before. We talked for 20 minutes. He explained the basics, commitment training opportunities, benefits, travel, education. He didn't promise me glory. He didn't make it sound like a movie. He made it sound like work, which is exactly what I wanted. I went home and didn't tell my family right away. I sat with the idea for days. I read everything. I looked up jobs. I watched videos that weren't recruitment ads, the real ones. People talking about long days and loud chiefs and missing holidays. It still sounded better than begging my own parents to care. When I finally told them, it was at dinner. Because of course it was. My family loved dropping emotional bombs over casseroles. "I'm enlisting in the Navy," I said, keeping my voice steady. The fork stopped halfway to my mom's mouth. My dad looked up like he'd just heard a weird noise outside. Kinsley actually laughed. A quick little snort like I'd made a joke. My mom blinked. "Why?" I didn't say the real answer. I didn't say, "Because I'm tired of being invisible in my own house." Because you only call me independent when you want to justify not helping me. Because I can't breathe here. Instead, I said I want stability. I want to build something. My dad stared at me for a long second, then said, "You know that's hard, right?" "Yes," I said. Kinsley leaned back in her chair, smug as ever. "You won't last. You hate being uncomfortable." That was funny, coming from someone whose idea of hardship was running out of oat milk. My mom tried to soften it. "Maybe you should just go to school like normal people." I looked at her. Normal people get support. Silence. My dad cleared his throat like he wanted to end the conversation before it got messy. "Do what you want. You're grown." That was the closest thing to encouragement I was going to get. Do what you want. Translation. Don't expect us to show up for it. A month later, I went to MEPS. I sat in a room full of strangers, filling out paperwork, getting poked and prodded, taking tests, waiting for my name to be called. It wasn't glamorous. It was fluorescent lights and plastic chairs, and people trying not to look nervous. I actually felt calm, because for the first time, I was in a place where nobody knew my family story. I was just Brielle, a person making a choice. On the day I shipped out, I packed my bag and walked downstairs. My mom was already in her work uniform. My dad was watching the news. Kinsley was on the couch, scrolling. I stood there with my bag waiting for some kind of moment. A hug? We're proud. Anything. My mom said, "Text when you land." My dad said, "Be careful." Kinsley didn't look up. "Don't call crying in a week." That was it. No send-off, no photo, no dramatic goodbye. I walked out of the house into the wet Portland morning and realized something as the door clicked shut behind me. It hurt, but it also freed me. Because if they weren't coming with me, then I didn't have to carry their expectations either. Boot camp was brutal. I'm not going to pretend it was inspiring music and motivational speeches. It was early mornings getting yelled at for breathing wrong and learning how to move fast even when your body wants to quit. But every time I thought about giving up, I pictured my sister's face when she said, "You won't last." And I kept going. Not for revenge, not yet. More like stubborn survival. I finished training. I earned my place. I learned how to speak with confidence, even when my voice wanted to shake. I learned that discipline doesn't care about your feelings. It cares about your choices. And while I was learning all of that, my family stayed exactly the same. They didn't write letters. They didn't visit. They didn't suddenly wake up and realize they had another daughter worth knowing. They just waited. And the weirdest part is I stopped needing them to change. The elevator dinged in the hotel lobby and the doors opened. I stepped in and watched my reflection in the metal wall. I looked different than the girl who left Portland years ago. Not because of the uniform bag in my hand, because of what it took to earn it. My phone buzzed again. This time I pulled it out, not because I hoped it was an apology, because I was ready for whatever Kinsley thought she could throw at me next. I stared at my phone in the elevator and felt that old urge to respond fast, like I still owed my sister an explanation for existing. Kinsley had sent another message. "Kinsley, seriously, don't act like some hero. Nobody cares." I read it twice, then did something that would have shocked teenage me. I didn't answer. The elevator doors opened. I stepped out on my floor, walked down the hallway, and slid the keycard into my room, like Kinsley's opinion didn't even weigh an ounce. That took practice, years of practice, because when I first joined, I was still carrying my family around in my head like a bad soundtrack. Every time someone raised their voice, my brain heard my dad's disappointment. Every time someone laughed, I heard Kinsley. Boot camp fixed that, not gently, more like with a hammer. People love to ask what boot camp is like, and I can always tell who wants the truth and who wants the movie version. The movie version is dramatic speeches and instant friendships and one perfect slow-motion graduation shot. The real version is you being tired, confused, and moving fast in shoes that hate you. I went to Great Lakes in the winter, which was my first mistake. I thought Portland rain was annoying. Great Lakes winter is like the air itself is mad at you. The first night they shaved down everything that made you feel like yourself. Not literally shaved, though some people did get the special haircut experience, but the rest of it. Your schedule, your privacy, your comfort, your ability to ask why without someone making you regret it. They told us where to stand, when to sit, how to speak, how to fold a shirt, like our lives depended on it. I remember the first time I got yelled at. I wasn't even doing something rebellious. I blinked wrong. I'm pretty sure I blinked wrong. A petty officer got in my face and said, "Recruit Hayes, are you confused?" "No, petty officer." "Then why do you look confused?" "Because you're screaming at me about socks, sir." But I didn't say that. I learned it fast that sarcasm is only funny when you're not the lowest person in the building. The days turned into a blur of running, drilling, cleaning, learning, repeating. The kind of routine that strips you down until all that's left is discipline and whatever stubbornness you showed up with. And I showed up with a lot, not because I was naturally tough. Because my family trained me for it without needing to. When you grow up being ignored, you learn how to handle silence. When you grow up being compared, you learn how to keep going, even when you don't get praise. Boot camp thrives on that. But there was one moment early on when I almost cracked. It was week 2. We'd been doing PT before sunrise, and my legs were aching in a way that didn't feel normal. Shin splints, they told me. That sounds cute, like a minor inconvenience. It's not. It's pain that turns every step into a decision. I went to sick call because I wasn't stupid. I'd watched people try to push through injuries and end up recycled, stuck there longer or worse. The corpsman looked at my legs, asked a few questions, and said, "You need to take it easy. Take it easy. In boot camp. That's like being told to relax during a tornado." I got put on light duty for a short stretch. No running, less impact. It should have been a relief. It wasn't, because the second you get pulled from the group, you feel it. The whispers, the looks, the quiet judgment that you're weak. And for a girl like me, being labeled weak was a trigger. I'd spent my whole life being treated like I wasn't enough. I wasn't about to let boot camp stamp that on me too, so I did the rehab stretches. I iced. I followed instructions, but every night lying in my rack, I'd stare at the ceiling and think, if I fail this, Kinsley will be right. And she'll never shut up about it. That thought annoyed me so much it kept me alive. There was a petty officer, Chief Wilcox, who ran our division like her life depended on it. She didn't yell for drama. She yelled because she expected you to be sharp. And if you weren't, she made you sharp. One afternoon, after I'd been limping through drills, trying not to show it, she called me out. "Recruit Hayes, front and center." My stomach dropped. Everyone watched. I marched up, heart pounding. "Yes, Chief?" She looked me up and down, then said quietly, "Your legs hurt." I hesitated. Boot camp teaches you to say as little as possible, but lying to a chief is a dumb hobby. "Yes, Chief." She nodded. "You think you're the only one who's ever been injured?" "No, Chief." "You think pushing through pain makes you strong?" I didn't answer fast enough, and she tilted her head like she could see straight through me. She said, "Let me tell you what strong looks like. Strong looks like doing what keeps you in the fight, not what makes you look tough for 5 minutes. That hit me like a slap. Not because it was harsh, because it was true. Back home, strong meant swallowing everything and pretending you didn't care. In the Navy, strong meant taking care of the machine, your body, your mind, so you could show up when it counted. Chief Wilcox dismissed me with one sentence. "Get smart. I need you graduating, not limping for attention." Limping for attention. If she knew my family, she'd know attention wasn't my thing. I was limping because I was scared of going back to being the one who couldn't. After that, I stopped trying to impress anybody. I focused on getting through. Clean movements, tight corners, correct answers, one day at a time. There were nights when the barracks finally went quiet, and I'd pull out the small notebook I kept folded in my pocket. I wrote reminders to myself like I was my own drill instructor. Don't quit. Don't argue. Don't take it personal. Finish what you started. I wrote one more line one night after a rough day. Nobody in Portland decides who I become. Letters came for other recruits. People would read them under their blankets, smiling, crying, folding them carefully like treasure. I got one letter my whole time there. It was from my mom. It wasn't, "We're proud." It wasn't, "We miss you." It said, "Make sure you're eating enough. Kinsley says hello." Kinsley says hello. I remember staring at that sentence and laughing silently. Not because it was funny, because it was so on brand it almost felt like satire. Even when I was grinding through boot camp, she still found a way to be inserted into my life like a footnote I didn't ask for. Graduation day came. It wasn't slow motion. It was cold air, tight formations, and families cheering. I stood in line and watched other recruits run to their parents afterward, hugging, taking pictures. I walked to the side with my sea bag and waited for a call. My mom answered on the second ring. "You done?" she asked. "Yes." "That's good," she said, like I just told her I finished doing laundry. "Your dad's working. Kinsley's out." I looked out at the crowd and felt something settle in my chest. Not sadness, not anger, certainty. I wasn't going to get the family moment, so I stopped chasing it. And the second I stopped chasing it, I felt lighter. When I got to my first command, I started over again. New place, new expectations, new people who didn't know my past. I wasn't Kinsley's sister. I wasn't the quiet one. I was just Hayes. And the work didn't care about my feelings. It cared about results. That's what I liked about it. Back in my hotel rooms now, I hung my garment bag carefully and laid out everything I needed. Shoes aligned, name tag ready, hair ties in place, the kind of preparation you learn when you've been responsible for yourself for a long time. My phone lit up again, group chat this time. "Mom, where are you staying?" "Dad, what's this thing tonight?" Kinsley didn't say anything, which meant she was watching. I set my phone down and zipped my bag with a slow, steady motion. I wasn't going to explain, not anymore. I picked up my jacket, checked the time, and walked out because there was a place I had to be, and people there actually meant it when they said they needed me. I stepped into the drizzle and let the cold air wake me up the rest of the way. The car service smelled like peppermint gum and someone's attempt at new car spray. The driver asked for the address, I gave it, and we rolled into Portland traffic like we had all the time in the world. I didn't. But I wasn't rushing either. Rushing is how you make mistakes, and in the Navy, mistakes don't just hurt your pride. They hurt schedules, people missions, and sometimes careers. That's the part civilians don't always get. They think military is all hero shots and dramatic music. Most of it is systems, and systems only work when someone cares about the small stuff. I learned that at my first command. I was assigned to a shore unit. Not a ship at first, which was fine by me. Shore duty isn't easy, it's just a different flavor of chaos. You still show up early, you still get chewed out, and you still learn fast that "not my job" is a sentence that will follow you around like a bad smell. My rate put me in operation support and logistics coordination. Translation: I handled the kind of work nobody notices until it's wrong. Parts requests, training schedules, movement of gear, coordinating between departments that all think they're the main character. I was the person making sure someone else's plan didn't fall apart because of a missing form or a misread line. On day one, a second-class petty officer tossed a stack of papers on my desk and said, "Figure it out." No guidance, no warm welcome, just the classic Navy onboarding package stress and a to-do list. I looked at the paperwork, asked a couple questions, and he shrugged like he couldn't believe I was speaking. "You new sailors always need your hand held," he said. I smiled. "No, petty officer. I just don't enjoy doing things twice." He stared at me for a second, then walked off. That became my pattern. I didn't argue. I didn't beg for approval. I did the work clean. I asked what mattered. I fixed what was broken. I stayed late when it counted. I didn't stay late to impress anybody. I stayed late because I refused to be the reason something failed. And that didn't make me popular at first. There's a weird type of person in every workplace who gets uncomfortable when someone is competent and quiet. They don't know where to place you. If you're loud, they can dismiss you. If you're messy, they can feel better about themselves. If you're steady, they have to deal with the fact that you might actually be good. I was steady. The first few months, I got the jobs nobody wanted, the last-minute stuff, the paperwork that had been sitting for weeks, the mistakes other people made that magically became my problem. I wasn't naive. I knew they were testing me. But here's the thing. When you've been tested your whole life, you stop taking it personally. You just pass. There was one week early on that almost broke me, not physically, but mentally. We were prepping for a major evaluation, readiness inspection. Everyone was stressed, everyone was snapping, and half the office was running on caffeine and denial. 2 days before the eval, I found a mismatch in a training tracker. A small error on paper, but it meant a whole section looked unqualified. If we'd gone into the evaluation like that, it wouldn't have been a whoops. It would have been a problem with consequences. People love consequences when they can pin them on the newest sailor. I walked it to my supervisor. He barely glanced at it. "It's fine." "It's not," I said calm. "It's wrong. If we don't fix it, it flags." He sighed like I was annoying him on purpose. "Do you have proof?" I didn't argue. I went back to my desk, pulled the training logs, cross-checked names, pulled the sign-in sheets, and highlighted the exact mismatch. Then I walked back and put it on his desk like I was delivering evidence. He stared at it longer this time. Then he said, "Fix it." No apology, no thank you, just an order. So I fixed it. I stayed late, updated the tracker, verified it with the departments, ran it back through our system, and got signatures. By the time I left, the building was basically empty, and the cleaning crew was looking at me like I lived there. The evaluation went well. Our department got praised for being organized. My supervisor took the compliment like he personally invented organization. Afterward, he walked by my desk, stopped, and said, "Good catch." That was it. 2 words. But in the Navy, that's basically a love letter. The next week, people started coming to me instead of going around me. Not because they suddenly liked me, because they trusted me. They knew if I said something was handled, it was handled. That's how respect works in the fleet. You don't win it with speeches. You win it by being the person who doesn't fall apart when the room gets loud. Around that time, I started using tuition assistants to take online classes. Nothing fancy. Just chipping away at credits between duty days and regular work. The funny part was, my family didn't even understand what I did. When I called home, my mom would ask, "So are you on a ship?" "No," I'd say. "Oh," she'd respond immediately, less interested as it, like the Navy only counts if there's a dramatic wave behind you. My dad would ask, "Is it dangerous?" "Not like that," I'd say. Kinsley would jump in with her favorite line, "So you're basically a secretary." That one used to sting. Then I realized it said more about her than me. She thought anything behind the scenes didn't matter because she only valued things people clap for. I valued results, and results started stacking up. I got qualified on systems quickly. I got trusted with bigger coordination tasks. I became the one junior sailors came to when they didn't want to get embarrassed asking someone else. I wasn't warm and fuzzy about it. I just answered questions and moved on, because I remembered what it felt like to be alone and confused. And I refused to recreate that for someone else. That's another thing boot camp taught me. You can be tough without being cruel. Then came the day things got real. We were supporting a high-tempo operation window. Lots of moving parts, people coming and going. Gear needing to be in the right place at the right time. Paperwork needing to match reality, because reality doesn't care what your spreadsheet says. A department head sent over an urgent request late in the afternoon. The kind of request where the subject line is all caps and you can practically hear them yelling through the email. We didn't have what they asked for in the timeline they wanted. If we missed the window, it wouldn't just be a delay. It would affect the entire schedule chain, which means somebody higher up would start asking questions, and those questions always roll downhill. My supervisor was already gone for the day. Of course. I stared at the request, then at the clock, then at the list of options, and I made a decision. I called the department, directly asked what they actually needed versus what they thought they needed, and found a workaround that kept the operation on track without violating policy. Then, I documented everything so nobody could pretend it didn't happen. It wasn't glamorous. No one cheered, but it worked. The next morning, the department head showed up at our office. I expected a complaint. Instead, he looked at me and said, "You the one who handled that request last night?" "Yes, Senior Chief." He nodded once. "Good job. That could have turned into a mess." My coworker next to me widened his eyes, like he couldn't believe someone just praised me out loud. I kept my face neutral, but inside I felt something shift. Because that wasn't just nice, that was proof. Proof that I belonged here. Proof that I wasn't surviving anymore. I was contributing. My phone buzzed again in my pocket, and I already knew what it was before I looked. A message from Kinsley, no doubt, with another comment about how nobody cares. I didn't check it. I had more important things to focus on now, because when your name starts getting noticed for the right reasons, people start watching you in ways you don't expect. I left my phone face down on my desk, like it was radioactive. Because if I looked at Kinsley's message right then, I'd either get annoyed or get distracted, and distraction is expensive in my line of work. Expensive like everyone remembers your name for the wrong reason. Instead, I pulled up at the task tracker, grabbed a pen, and started mapping out what needed to happen next. The thing people misunderstand about operations is they think it's just planning, like it's a cute little calendar job. It's not. Operations is where small mistakes become big problems. And big problems don't show up with a warning label. They show up when you're already behind. A few months after that last-minute request, our unit got word we'd be supporting a real-world mission tempo. Not a training exercise. Not a drill. A time-sensitive support operation tied to a larger effort. I can't get into every detail, and honestly, I don't need to. What matters is this. A lot of people were counting on us to do our job clean. We had movement schedules, gear coordination checklists, and enough emails to make you question whether humanity peaked before Outlook was invented. The first day the tempo ramped up, I could feel the shift in the building. You know it when everyone stops joking. The hallways get quieter. People walk faster. Chiefs stop smiling. The air feels sharper. That's when you learn who's solid and who's just loud. I was in the middle of updating a movement roster when a message popped up from a department I didn't usually deal with directly. It was from someone senior, one of those emails that makes your stomach tighten because you can tell they're already irritated. Subject line: urgent movement discrepancy. Great! Love that. I opened it and read the details. The roster they received didn't match the finalized schedule. Names didn't line up. Time blocks were off. A piece of equipment listed for one team was showing under another. On paper, it looked like we were about to send the wrong people with the wrong gear at the wrong time. If that happened, it wouldn't just be embarrassing. It could create a chain reaction, delay safety issues, missed windows, and a whole lot of angry leadership asking why everyone suddenly forgot how to read. I checked our internal copy. Ours looked right, which meant someone else was working off an old version. That sounds small. It's not small. In operations, old version is how things break. I stood up and walked straight to the shared printer area where the latest roster copies were kept. I flipped through the stack. Then my eyes caught it. 2 versions. One marked final and one marked final updated. You know what that means? It means someone did the classic mistake. They updated a document, but didn't control distribution. So, half the unit was living in yesterday, while the other half lived in today. That is how you end up on someone's never trust again list. I took a breath and did what I always do when something starts to slide. I made it smaller. Step 1. Confirm which version leadership approved. I called my supervisor, who was in a meeting. He didn't answer. Step 2. Find the approving signature or message. I dug through emails and found it. The final updated version had been approved the night before by our operations officer. It was legit. Step 3. Figure out who had the old version and stop it before it spread further. I walked to the other office and asked who printed the rosters. A third class looked up and said I did. Why? I didn't yell. I didn't make a scene. I just said, "Which file did you use?" He opened his laptop and clicked the attachment. The wrong one. I nodded. Okay, we're fixing it now. His face went pale. Am I in trouble? That was the moment I realized something. Nobody wants the mission to fail. Most people mess up because they're overwhelmed or rushing, not because they're evil. Kinsley could learn something from that, honestly. I said, not if we handle it fast. Then I moved. I printed the correct version, stapled it, and took it straight to the departments affected. I also sent a corrected email with a clean subject line and a bold note, "Please disregard prior version, use attached." But I didn't stop there. Because I've learned you can't rely on "please disregard" when you're dealing with stressed out people and deadlines. I started calling. One by one, I got the responsible leads on the phone, confirmed they had the updated roster, and asked them to verbally verify their personnel and gear list. It took time. It took patience. It took the kind of calm tone you use when you're trying not to scream at a printer. Halfway through, my supervisor finally called back. "What's going on?" he asked, voice tight. "We have 2 versions of the movement roster floating," I said. Old one got printed and distributed. I'm recalling it and confirming departments have the approved update. There was a pause. Then he said, "Who did it?" I could have thrown the 3rd class under the bus. People love having a scapegoat. It makes leadership feel productive. Instead, I said, "It's a process problem. We need version control and a single point of distribution." Another pause. "Then handle it," he said. "Keep me updated." I did. I handled it. We got the right people with the right gear on the right schedule. We didn't miss the movement window. We didn't create a safety issue. We didn't get ripped apart in a meeting the next morning. And the best part? Nobody outside operations even knew what almost happened. That's the thing about doing your job well. Sometimes the reward is that nothing goes wrong. Later that night, I was still at my desk, documenting the corrective actions. Because if you don't document it, it didn't happen, and then it happens again. My supervisor walked in. He looked tired. His eyes went to the roster on my desk, then to the notes I'd typed. "You caught that?" he asked. "Yes." He nodded slowly. "Good. That could have been ugly." That was his version of a compliment. Then he surprised me. He pointed at the top of my notes. "Email this to me and the ops officer. We're putting in a new control procedure." I blinked. "Copy." He paused at the doorway and looked back. "Hayes," he said. "Yes, petty officer. You ever think about taking on more responsibility? Leading some of this officially?" I didn't answer right away because my brain was busy processing the fact that someone was asking me that seriously. Like, LPO track, I asked. He nodded. "Something like that. You've got the temperament for it." Temperament. That was such a Navy compliment. It basically means you don't lose your mind when everything's on fire. I thanked him and kept working, but inside something shifted again. Because in my family, responsibility was a punishment. It meant doing more with less while someone else got credit. In the Navy, responsibility was recognition. It meant people trusted you enough to put weight on your shoulders. A week later, I got called into the office. Not for trouble. For an award write-up. Not a huge medal. Nothing that would get me on a national stage. But a command-level recognition for my work during the tempo push. The kind that actually matters in a career. The kind that gets noticed. The admin clerk told me public affairs might want a photo. I said, "For what?" She shrugged. "They're doing a hometown spotlight thing. Some local station asked for feel-good military stories." I almost laughed. My life was not feel-good. It was mostly spreadsheets and stress. But I nodded. Okay. When I walked back to my desk, my phone lit up again. A missed call from my mom. Then a text. "Mom, your aunt says she saw something about you online. What is it?" I stared at the message. Interesting how nobody had time to pick me up. But suddenly, everyone had time to ask questions when my name might be attached to something they could brag about. I didn't respond. I opened my email instead. There was a calendar invite sitting there, with tonight's schedule, the location, and the public affairs contact, everything timed down to the minute. I read it once, then again, then set my phone down slowly. Because if Portland wanted to pay attention now, it was going to happen on my terms. I slid the calendar invite open again, not because I didn't understand it, but because I wanted to make sure I wasn't imagining how perfectly the timing lined up. Thursday. Arrive PDX, 3:00 p.m. Uniform check, 5:45 p.m. Arrival at venue, 6:30 p.m. Ceremony, 7:00 p.m. Local media present. Public affairs live stream. Everything was planned down to the minute. The only unplanned part was my family acting like my existence was a scheduling issue. I kept my phone in my pocket the whole ride from the hotel. Not because I was being dramatic, but because I didn't trust myself not to look. My mom's message was still sitting there, and I already knew what it would turn into. She'd either pretend she always supported me, or she'd ask some dumb question like, "Do you get paid extra for that?" as if respect comes with a coupon code. The car service dropped me at a small prep spot near the waterfront where public affairs had asked me to meet for a quick check-in. Nothing fancy, just a clean room, a couple folding chairs, and two people with clipboards acting like they could solve world peace if you gave them enough forms. A petty officer from PA introduced herself. Hayes. "Thanks for being early." "I'm always early," I said. She smiled. "Yeah, we can tell." She checked my uniform like she was inspecting a museum piece. "Name tag good, ribbons good, hair solid. You'd be surprised." "I wouldn't," I said, and she laughed. Then she handed me a small card. "If the reporter asks questions, keep it simple. Don't get into sensitive details. Talk about teamwork. Keep it human." "Human," I repeated. "Got it." She looked up. "You nervous?" I thought about lying, but what was the point? Not about being on camera. More about, "Oh, it's cute. DC." The rest of it. She nodded like she understood without me explaining. In the military, people don't need your full backstory to recognize that family can be complicated. "Whatever it is," she said, "remember you earned this." I thanked her, stepped outside, and felt the drizzle hit my cheeks. Portland really doesn't know how to do a clear day. It's always damp like the city is sweating. My phone buzzed. I took it out before I could talk myself out of it. Group chat. Mom. "So what time is your thing? Dad, are we supposed to be there?" I stared at those messages and felt something almost funny rise in my throat. Because just a few hours ago, nobody had time to pick me up. Now, suddenly, they're worried about being supposed to be there. And Kinsley, my sister, the CEO of Unsolicited Opinions, hadn't written anything since her don't act important message. I didn't answer them. Not yet. I put the phone away and got into another car, headed toward the venue. The driver took the side streets past wet storefronts and coffee shops full of people who looked like they were writing novels they would never finish. I watched Portland slide by and thought about how many times I'd tried to make my family see me. I wasn't coming back for a hug. I wasn't coming back for a cake. I wasn't even coming back for an apology. I'd outgrown waiting for those things. I was here because my command had scheduled this. Public affairs had lined up local media, and my job was to show up looking sharp and say the right words. That's it. And if my family happened to see me on TV later, that was just bonus. The car pulled into a lot near the venue, an armory-style community space where they held joint event ceremonies and those hometown recognition nights that mix uniforms with local officials and folding chairs. It wasn't a movie set. It was real. Fluorescent lights, polished floors, flags in the corners, and enough metal chairs to make your back regret being born. I stepped out and immediately heard the low hum of people arriving. Boots on the floor, murmurs, the clink of a microphone being tested. A petty officer at the door checked my name and waved me through. "They're setting up in the back." I walked down a hallway and found a small staging area where a few other service members were adjusting collars and fixing ribbons. Everyone looked serious in that quiet way people do when the moment actually matters. I checked myself one more time in a mirror. Not because I was vain. Because I've learned that if you give people even one tiny thing to criticize, they'll grab it like it's free food. And my family especially loved a free meal. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Kinsley. "Kinsley, are you really doing some ceremony thing? Like on TV?" I stared at her message. So she knew. Of course she knew. Someone told her, or she went digging, or she suddenly cared because there was a camera involved. I typed a response, then erased it. I could have said, "Yes, and you could have picked me up." I could have said, "You mocked me at 3 p.m., and now you're curious." Instead, I wrote 2 words. "Yeah, tonight." Then I set my phone down like it didn't matter. A PA rep walked in and clapped once, getting everyone's attention. "Okay, 15 minutes. Livestream goes live a few minutes before. If a reporter pulls you aside, keep it short and clean. Remember teamwork, community service. Service. That word used to make me think of sacrifice in a dramatic way. Now it just meant showing up, doing your job, and not making it about your ego. I took a breath, rolled my shoulders back, and stepped toward the side of the main hall. The room was filling up. Local officials in suits, a couple reporters with cameras, some families of other service members, people I didn't know and would never see again. The kind of crowd that claps because they actually appreciate the uniform, not because they're obligated. The stage area was simple. Podium, flag, screen behind it ready to display names and photos. I caught a glimpse of the screen tech running a test slide, There it was, Brielle Hayes, last name in all caps, because the military loves to make everything look like a shipping label. Seeing my name like that bright on the screen did something to me. Not in a dramatic tears in my eyes way, in a practical way, like a reminder. This was real. This was happening, whether my family showed up or not. I scanned the audience without thinking and felt that familiar tiny sting. I didn't see them. No mom, no dad, no Kinsley. Not surprising, but still, it hit. Then I remembered the group chat, the airport, take an Uber, the way Kinsley wrote it like I was a burden. And weirdly, that sting turned into calm, because now I knew something for sure. Tonight wasn't about them. I took my seat with the other service members near the front. The MC stepped up, tapped the mic, and the room quieted. The camera light clicked on. Someone in the back lifted a phone on a tripod for the live stream. The MC smiled that practiced public smile. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out to honor the men and women who've served our community and our country. As he spoke, my phone buzzed one more time. A new message in the group chat. Mom, we turned on the news. Which channel is it on? I didn't answer. I didn't even pick up the phone. I sat up straighter, fixed my gaze forward, and listened as the first names were announced. Awards recognitions, short bios, each one met with polite applause. My palms were dry, my breathing steady. I kept my expression neutral because that's what the uniform teaches you. Then the MC paused and looked down at the card in his hand. And next he said, we have a sailor whose work behind the scenes made all the difference when the pressure was on. I felt every sound in the room sharpen chairs, shifting people, leaning forward, the camera adjusting focus, while my name sat right there on that screen, waiting for the moment it became impossible to ignore. I kept my hands flat on my knees so nobody could see how tightly my fingers wanted to curl. The MC's voice was steady, polished. He had the kind of tone that made every sentence sound important, even when he was reading off a card printed on cheap paper. And next, he said again, we're recognizing a sailor whose attention to detail and leadership under pressure helped keep a critical operation on track. He glanced up, smiling like he already knew the punchline. Petty Officer Brielle Hayes. For half a second, the room didn't react because people always take a beat to match the name on the page to the person in the chair. Then the applause started. It wasn't a roaring stadium sound. It was real applause. The kind you get from people who don't know you personally, but respect the work. I stood up, walked toward the stage, and kept my face calm. That was the whole point. You don't walk up like you're surprised. You walk up like you belong there because you do. The camera light felt warm on my cheek. I could hear the click of a photographer's shutter, the soft whir of a video camera adjusting. On the screen behind the podium, my name sat in big block letters. Brielle Hayes. And under it, a photo Public Affairs had taken earlier. Me in uniform, nothing dramatic. Just a straight-on shot that said, yes, I am here, and yes, this is real. The MC shook my hand and handed me a plaque. It wasn't a trophy. It wasn't some giant check. It was a simple recognition, official and clean, the kind that mattered in a career because it went in your record and people remembered it. He leaned toward the mic. This sailor's work helped identify and correct a roster discrepancy that could have caused delays and major issues across multiple teams. She didn't just catch it. She took ownership, coordinated the fix, and prevented a chain reaction. I heard a couple murmurs from the audience. People love chain reaction stories. They make it sound like you stopped a train with your bare hands. The truth was less cinematic. The truth was I did my job when someone else could have shrugged and said, not my problem. But that's what makes you useful. You don't wait for permission to care. The MC handed me the microphone. I took it and looked out over the room. Faces in rows. A few other service members sitting upright. Local officials smiling. Reporters watching like they were trying to decide if I looked inspiring enough. And in the back, a phone on a tripod streaming it all live. I didn't look for my parents. I didn't look for Kinsley. I didn't want to give them that space in my head in the one moment that was mine. I kept it simple. Thank you, I said. I appreciate the recognition. What I did wasn't a solo thing. It was teamwork. We all rely on each other to get it right, especially when the pressure's high. I'm grateful to my leaders and my team for trusting me with responsibility. Then, because I'm not a robot, and I'm not going to pretend my life didn't shape me, I added one more line. Just one, clean and sharp. And to anyone who's ever been told they don't matter, I'm here to tell you, do the work anyway. That got a bigger reaction. People like that line. It lands because it's true, and it doesn't sound like a speechwriter touched it. I handed the mic back, shook the MC's hand again, and walked off stage. As soon as I sat back down, my pocket vibrated like my phone was trying to escape. I didn't look right away. I let it buzz, let it ring, let it do whatever it needed to do. Because for once I wasn't reacting, I was choosing. The ceremony moved on, more names, more applause, more plaques. I listened, clapped when it was appropriate, stayed present. It's easy to get tunnel vision and act like you're the only person doing something hard. That's not how the military works. Plenty of people in that room had done things I'd never want to do. When the event wrapped up, public affairs pulled me aside for a quick photo with a local official. Nothing fancy, just a handshake and a smile. A reporter asked, "What does it feel like to be honored in your hometown?" I almost laughed. Hometown. Like the town itself hugged me. I said, "It feels good to represent where I'm from." Portland made me tough. That was true in a way the reporter didn't understand. After the photos, I stepped out into the hallway and finally checked my phone. It was chaos. Missed calls. Group chat notifications. Texts from numbers I hadn't saved. My aunt. A cousin I barely knew. An old neighbor. Then I saw the ones that mattered because they were the ones that were always quiet until there was something to gain. Mom. "Oh my God, we just saw you on TV. Mom, Brielle, call me right now. Dad, are you free? Call us, Dad." We didn't know. Kinsley. Just 3 dots. No words. No joke. No sarcastic comment. For Kinsley, that was like seeing a unicorn. I stared at the typing bubble, waiting for her to do what she always did, spin it down, play it. Make it about her. Nothing came. The 3 dots disappeared, then nothing again. I felt a small, sharp satisfaction. Not the kind where you feel proud of being petty, but the kind where you finally see proof that a person can't always control the story. Kinsley couldn't laugh this off. She couldn't call it not that serious. Not when the whole city could click on a clip and see my name. I didn't respond to anyone. Not my mom, not my dad, not my aunt, and definitely not Kinsley. I wasn't trying to punish them. I just wasn't willing to reward that behavior with immediate access to me. Back in the hotel, I took off my shoes and put the plaque on the desk without ceremony. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and let the quiet settle. My phone buzzed again. "Mom. We're so proud of you, Mom. Why didn't you tell us, Mom? You could have let us come." I read that last line twice. You could have let us come. As if I was the gatekeeper to their basic interest. As if I'd been hiding this from them out of spite. I didn't not tell them. They didn't ask. That's the whole point. If your love only activates after the news does a segment, it's not love. It's public relations. I set the phone down and walked to the window. Portland lights reflected off wet streets. Cars moved slowly. People lived their normal lives. Somewhere out there, my family was probably sitting in the living room, replaying the clip on their phone, trying to rewrite the past in their heads. Trying to figure out how to speak to me now that I had something they could brag about. I wasn't naive. I knew what usually comes next in families like mine. First there's shock, then there's pride, then there's a request. I didn't know exactly what they'd ask for this time, but I had a pretty good guess it wouldn't start with, "We're sorry." My phone buzzed again, a direct call now. I watched it ring until it stopped. Then another call came in immediately, like my mother believed persistence could replace accountability. I let it ring too. I didn't feel guilty. I felt calm. Calm like I'd finally put down a weight I'd been carrying since I was 10. A few minutes later, a new message popped up from my dad. "Dad, let's meet tomorrow just to talk. Just to talk." In my family, just to talk usually meant we want something, but we're going to warm you up first. I didn't answer. I picked up the plaque again, turned it over in my hands, and read the engraved text, like I was checking it was still real. Then I put it back down and started getting ready for bed. Not because I was done thinking, but because I'd learned something in the Navy: you rest when you can, because you never know when you'll need your energy. And I had a feeling I was going to need mine soon. My phone buzzed one more time. This time it wasn't my mom. It was Kinsley. And this time she finally sent actual words. I picked up my phone like it weighed more than it should. Kinsley's message was short, which is how you know it wasn't written for kindness. Kinsley never did kindness in full sentences. "Kinsley, so, you got paid for that, right?" I stared at it, then laughed once out loud alone in my hotel room. Not because it was funny, because it was so perfectly her that it almost felt scripted. I didn't respond. I set the phone down, turned off the lamp, and forced myself to sleep. Not the best sleep, but enough. The next morning, I woke up to Portland rain tapping the window like it had an opinion. I got dressed in regular clothes, packed my uniform carefully, and checked out of the hotel. I had a flight later that afternoon. I also had a choice. I could ignore my family completely and leave town like a ghost. Or I could meet them once in a controlled way and say what needed to be said so they couldn't keep circling back with the same nonsense. I chose the second one, not because they deserved it, because I did. We agreed on a public place near the waterfront. One of those Portland coffee shops where everyone looks like they's either writing a screenplay or recovering from one. Plenty of people around, plenty of exits. No chance of a dramatic scene in my parents' living room with old family photos judging me from the walls. I got there early. Of course I did. I sat at a table near the window, ordered black coffee, and kept my phone face down again. A habit now. A boundary with a screen. When they walked in, I felt it immediately, the way their energy filled the room like they owned it. My mom spotted me first. She smiled too big, like she was trying to make up for years in one facial expression. "There she is," she said, voice bright. My dad followed behind her, stiff and formal, like he was walking into a job interview. And Kinsley looked different. Not in a good way. In a she didn't sleep because she was busy panicking way. Hair done but not relaxed. Eyes moving too fast. That forced smile people wear when they're about to ask you for something and they're hoping you don't notice. They slid into the chairs like we were a normal family meeting for brunch. My mom reached across the table, tried to touch my hand. I didn't pull away dramatically. I just shifted my coffee cup slightly enough to create space without a scene. She pretended not to notice. "We're so proud of you," she said quickly. "We had no idea. You looked amazing. Amazing, like I was a dress she found on sale." My dad nodded. "Yeah, good job." Kinsley didn't compliment me. She just stared at my face like she was comparing it to the clip in her head. I waited. I didn't jump in with gratitude. I didn't fill the silence. Because I've learned something important about people who avoid accountability. If you stay quiet long enough, they'll reveal the real reason they came. My mom cleared her throat. "Oh, We wanted to talk about last night." I nodded. "Okay." She rushed forward. "We didn't mean it the way it sounded." I raised an eyebrow. "Which part? Take an Uber or no one has time?" My mom's cheeks flushed. "Brielle." My dad leaned in slightly, as if he could smooth this over with tone alone. "We were busy. That's all." Kinsley rolled her eyes. "Oh my God. You're still stuck on that?" There it was. The reflex. Mock first, minimize second. I looked at her. Calm. "Yeah, I'm still stuck on being treated like a burden." Kinsley huffed. "I was joking." "No," I said, still calm. "You were comfortable." That landed. I could tell because she went quiet, and Kinsley never goes quiet unless she's losing control of the conversation. My mom jumped in fast, trying to change direction, like she was swerving around a pothole. We didn't know you were doing something that big." "It wasn't big enough to ask about," I said. "But it was big enough to watch on TV." My dad shifted in his chair, looking annoyed now. He hated when I spoke in complete sentences. He sighed. "Look, you're doing well. That's what matters." I nodded once. "Sure." Then my mom leaned forward, voice softening in that fake, gentle way she used whenever she wanted something. "Sweetheart, did you get a bonus for that recognition?" And there it was. "Not. Are you okay?" "Not. Did we hurt you?" "Not. We're sorry." "Money." My stomach didn't drop. I didn't feel surprised. I felt almost impressed by how quickly they got there, like they couldn't even pretend for 10 full minutes. Before I could answer, my dad added, "Yeah, how does that work? Do they pay you extra, like a cash award?" Kinsley finally spoke, trying to sound casual. "Or do you get, like, a check? Because people were saying online you probably got paid." People were saying online. I took a slow sip of coffee and let the silence stretch. Not as punishment, as reality. Then I said no. "It's not a game show. I didn't win a pile of money on stage." My mom blinked. "But you got something right." "I got a plaque and official recognition," I said. "The kind that helps my career. That's it." My dad frowned. "So no money." I stared at him. "That's what you're focused on." He spread his hands like I was the unreasonable one. "I'm just asking." Kinsley leaned in now, her voice dropping. "Okay, but you do make good money now, right? With the Navy, and you're getting benefits and all that." I didn't answer that, because the number wasn't the point. The point was, they were treating my life like a resource. My mom's tone got even softer, which is always a sign she's about to make a request. "You know your sister's been trying to get her boutique off the ground. She's been working really hard." I almost choked. Kinsley working really hard. That was new. My dad jumped in. "She just needs a little help. Just some startup money." "Not a lot. Enough to cover rent for a space inventory marketing. You're in a position now." Kinsley sat back, pretending she wasn't listening closely, but her eyes were locked on me. "I set my cup down, so that's why you're here. My mom gave a quick, nervous laugh. We're here because we're family. Aishi, we support each other. I nodded slowly. Interesting, because when I needed support, you told me to take an Uber. My dad's jaw tightened. You're holding a grudge. I'm holding a memory, I said. There's a difference. Kinsley scoffed. Oh my God, you always do this. You always make everything about how you're the victim. I looked at her and felt something click into place with total clarity. Kinsley wasn't mad that I was upset. She was mad that I wasn't easy anymore. I leaned back in my chair and kept my voice level. You don't get to mock me at 3 p.m. and claim me at 10 p.m. My mom's face froze. My dad looked like he wanted to interrupt, but he didn't. Kinsley's eyes narrowed. What does that even mean? It means I said, you don't get to treat me like I'm inconvenient when I need something small. Then show up the moment you think there's money or attention attached to my name. My mom reached for my hand again, and this time I didn't move the cup. I just let her hand hang in the air until she pulled it back. She swallowed. We're proud of you. Pride isn't a substitute for respect, I said. And it's definitely not a substitute for being there. My dad leaned forward, voice low now. So you're saying no? I looked at him. I'm saying I'm not funding Kinsley's dream. Kinsley's face shifted instantly like her mask slipped. Wow. So you're just going to abandon your own sister? I almost smiled. Almost. Because the irony was so heavy, it could have been used as an anchor. I said I'm not abandoning you. I'm just not rescuing you. My mom's eyes welled, but I didn't buy it. She could cry on command when it helped her argument. Brielle, she whispered, family is family. I kept my voice quiet but sharp. Family isn't supposed to be one person giving and everyone else taking. My dad sat back, lips pressed together like he'd run out of ways to control the conversation. Kinsley crossed her arms and stared at me with that same expression she had when we were kids, and she wanted my parents to punish me. Only this time there was no punishment coming. I checked the time on my watch like it was just another appointment. Because in a way it was. Then I looked back up at all three of them and said, if you want help, I can help you do it the right way. Kinsley's eyes lit up for half a second. I continued before she could celebrate. I'll review a business plan. I'll point you to resources. I'll connect you with a mentor if I can. But I'm not writing a check, and I'm not putting my name on your debt. The table went silent. My mom looked offended. My dad looked insulted. Kinsley looked like she'd just realized I wasn't the same person she used to talk over. And I sat there steady because for the first time in my life, I wasn't asking them to choose me. I already had. I stood up slowly, not to make a scene, but to make it clear the meeting wasn't going to turn into a negotiation. My mom's eyes followed me like I'd just committed a crime. My dad looked irritated, like I'd violated some unspoken rule where parents are always right and daughters are always supposed to fold. And Kinsley looked like she was doing mental math, trying to figure out what button to press next. Sit down, my dad said like I was 16 again. I didn't even blink. No. That one word hit this table harder than any yelling ever could. My mom tried to keep her voice sweet. Brielle, don't do this in public. I almost laughed. You mean like how you did me in public when you watched me on TV and started texting like you'd been my biggest fan the whole time? Her face tightened. That's not fair. It's accurate, I said. Kinsley scoffed loud enough that a couple people at the next table glanced over. You're really enjoying this, huh? Enjoying it, like I was throwing a party. I kept my voice low. I'm not enjoying anything. I'm just not pretending anymore. My dad leaned forward, elbows on the table. We're asking for help. You're in a better position now. That's how family works. I looked at him. No? That's how taking works. His eyes narrowed. Excuse me? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. When I needed help, you told me to figure it out. When I needed support, you were busy. When I needed a ride from the airport, you told me to take an Uber. Kinsley rolled her eyes so hard I thought they'd get stuck. Oh my God, you're obsessed with that Uber thing. I turned to her. Because it wasn't about the ride. It was about what it proved. She opened her mouth ready to fire back, but I didn't give her room. It proved you don't show up for me when it cost you time, I said. But you show up fast when you think it might pay you back. My mom's voice shook. We are proud of you. I nodded once. Okay. Then be proud without trying to profit from it. Silence. For a second, nobody knew what to say because they weren't used to me speaking in full truths. In my family, we did half-truths. Let's not talk about that. We did guilt and avoidance, not honesty. Kinsley finally snapped. So you're just going to leave me hanging, like I'm nothing. I studied her face. She looked angry, but underneath it she looked scared. Not scared of failing, scared of losing her position. Kinsley had always been the center. The favored one. The one my parents protected from consequences. Now that I wasn't playing my role anymore, her whole system was wobbling. I said, Kinsley, you're not nothing, but you're not my responsibility. My dad slammed his hand lightly on the table, enough to rattle my mom's spoon. You're being selfish. That word used to work on me. It used to send me spiraling into proving I wasn't selfish. Proving I was good, proving I deserved love. Now it just sounded like a last resort. I tilted my head. Selfish would have been me cutting you off years ago and never speaking again. Selfish would have been me laughing at you the way you laughed at me. Kinsley's face went red. I didn't laugh at you. I looked her dead in the eyes. You told me not to act important. You told me nobody cares. You told me to take an Uber because you weren't my taxi. She opened her mouth, then closed it. My mom jumped in voice, pleading now. People make mistakes, Brielle. We didn't realize. I cut her off gently. You didn't realize because you didn't look. That line landed harder than anything else I'd said. Because it was simple. And true. They weren't evil masterminds. They were just comfortable ignoring me. My dad leaned back, arms crossed. So what, you think you're better than us now because you got some plaque? No, I said. I think I'm better than the version of me that begged for crumbs. My mom flinched like she'd been slapped. Kinsley stared at her nails like she suddenly found them fascinating. I exhaled slowly and made my voice even. Here's what I can do. If Kinsley wants to build something, I'll help her do it the right way. I'll sit down with her and go through numbers. I'll show her how to make a basic plan. I'll point her to programs, small business resources, whatever. But I will not give her money, and I will not sign anything that ties my name to her debt. My dad scoffed. So you'll give advice but not actual help. I nodded. Exactly. Because advice builds skill. A check builds dependency. Kinsley's eyes flashed. You think I'm dependent? I didn't flinch. I think you've been protected from consequences so long, you think consequences are someone else's job. My mom whispered, Brielle. I held up one hand, not to silence her, but to keep the conversation from turning into noise. I'm not saying this to hurt you. I'm saying it because I'm done living in a system where my success becomes your safety net. My dad stood up too, pushing his chair back. Unbelievable. He looked around the coffee shop like he wanted witnesses, like public shame was going to scare me into changing my mind. Nobody cared. It was Portland. Half the people in there were wearing headphones and ignoring their own lives. My mom stood adjusting her purse strap with trembling hands. I can't believe you're doing this. I looked at her. You didn't believe in me when it mattered. Now you believe in me because the news did. That one made her eyes water again. She pressed her lips tight, like she was trying not to cry and not to yell at the same time. Kinsley stayed seated, arms crossed, jaw tight. Then she said quietly, So that's it. You're just cutting us off. I shook my head. No, I'm setting rules. My dad laughed bitterly. Rules. Listen to you. I kept my tone calm. If you want a relationship with me, it's going to be based on respect. Not guilt. Not favors. Not showing up when you want something. My mom's voice was small. We're your parents. And I'm your daughter, I said. Not your emergency fund. That was the moment my dad stopped looking angry and started looking unsure. Like he suddenly realized he didn't have a move left that would work. He grabbed his coat, muttered something under his breath, and started walking toward the door. My mom hesitated, torn between following him and trying one more emotional tactic. Kinsley finally stood slow, like she hated giving up the chair. As she passed me, she said low enough that my parents wouldn't hear. You really think you're so tough now? I met her eyes. I am tough. I had to be. You made sure of it. Her face twitched. She wanted to say something mean, something that would put me back in the old place, but she didn't. She just walked out. I stayed standing for a moment, then sat back down and picked up my coffee. It was cold now. Of course it was. Everything always goes cold at the wrong time. I took a sip anyway. I wasn't shaking, I wasn't crying, I wasn't even angry. I felt clear, because here's the truth. I didn't join the Navy to become a headline. I joined because I needed to build a life that didn't depend on whether my family approved of me. And I did. I left some cash on the table for my coffee and walked out into the rain. Portland air hit my face again, damp and sharp, and I pulled my coat tighter. On the sidewalk, my phone buzzed. I thought it was my mom, or my dad, or Kinsley trying one more time to twist the knife. It wasn't. It was a message from Chief Wilcox, the same chief who once told me, strong looks like staying in the fight. Chief Wilcox. You handled that hometown event well. When you get back, come see me. We're talking about your next step. I stared at the text for a second, then slipped my phone back into my pocket and started walking, letting the rain dot my sleeves like punctuation. I had a flight to catch, a career to keep building, and a life that finally felt like it belonged to me. If you've lived through family drama like this, if you've ever been the afterthought in your own house, remember this? You don't owe anyone access to you just because they share your last name. In the military, you learn that trust is earned, not demanded. Family should work the same way. Boundaries aren't revenge, they're self-respect. And sometimes the best ending to a family revenge story isn't payback. It's choosing a life where their approval isn't the prize anymore. If you want more family revenge stories with real military life and real consequences, subscribe to the channel. I keep these stories honest, sharp, and worth your time.